Do you know how to say where you're from in Spanish? Such as, I'm Canadian, I live in Toronto.
By the end of this episode, you'll be able to say where you're from, where you live, and ask someone else about where they are from in Espanol. And you'll get to try it yourself in today's Reto de la semana.
Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your experienced Spanish teacher and co-host from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
We'll help you get confident listening and speaking beginner Spanish with content you can actually use in real-life conversations.
Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on socials at Spanglish_friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos. Hola friends, bienvenidos and welcome to episode 43, episodio 43.
Bienvenidos amigos and welcome. That's right, Profe Val. Today, we're focusing on one simple but powerful beginner Spanish skill, and that's talking about who you are and where you live in Spanish. This comes up all the time in real life conversations when you're meeting new people, when you're traveling and introducing yourself. I've certainly used the vocab we're going to be teaching you many times when I was traveling all across South America.
Exactamente. In this episode, Em and I are answering common questions that beginners have when I've taught them about this topic for many years.
And these questions include, how do you say your nationality in Spanish? How do you say where you live right now in Spanish? And finally, how do you ask someone where they're from versus where they live?
You'll hear all three questions answered in our mini conversation, nuestra conversación pequeña, and then we'll break everything down that you need to know as a beginner.
That's right, Profe Val. So in a moment, you're going to hear us have a short conversation where we're going to pretend that we're two strangers meeting for the very first time.
Remember, friends, the goal is not to understand every word. Just listen for any words you recognize. That way, you are proving to yourself that your Spanish listening skills are improving.
You don't need to memorize anything. This is about understanding, not perfection.
Amiga Em, ready?
Sí, profe. Comencemos.
Hola, buenos días. ¿De dónde eres?
Hola, soy australiana.
¡Ay, qué bien! Yo soy venezolana. ¿Y dónde vives?
Ahora vivo en Toronto, Canadá. If that felt fast, friends, do not worry. This is completely a normal feeling for beginners to have.
You weren't meant to understand every word yet. And if you didn't, you are still doing great.
What you just heard was a simple conversation about nationality and where people live.
This is exactly the kind of Spanish we're working towards today. And it's a model for today's Reto, our challenge of the week that you are going to be able to participate in shortly to practice your Spanish skills.
Yes, so now let's slow it right back down and break down what Val and I spoke about into easy chunks so you can use it yourself right away. Vamos, Profe Val.
Vamos, starting with our first question. How do you say your nationality in Spanish? In Spanish, the most common way to say your nationality is with the sentence structure soy plus nationality. Soy means I am, and then you add the place where you were born.
That's right. So for example, I would say soy australiana. Soy australiana. This means I am Australian. This is what I responded to Profe Val in our mini conversation.
And I would say soy venezolana. I'm Venezuelan. Here is something important and very beginner friendly. In Spanish, some nationalities change depending on the person, okay? Depending on the gender or if they identify as male or female. And also some of them, we're going to see some examples, might not change at all.
So typically, nationalities will end in O for the masculine form and A for the feminine form. So if I identified as male, I would say soy australiano instead of soy australiana. Can you hear the difference there between australiano with the O at the end and australiana?
The second group are the ones that end in S. This is E with accent and S. They change to have the A at the end too, with the female form. Let's see some examples. If you're English, in Spanish, we would say inglés for male, and female would be inglesa. We're adding here an A at the end of S, okay, to make the female form. Let's see another example. Irish would be irlandés for a man, and for a woman would be irlandesa.
Other nationalities in Spanish end in ense, ense. These are the cool kids, okay? They don't change their ending based on genders. They're going to stay the same for everyone, no matter if you identify as male or female.
For example, if you're from United States of America, the country is Estados Unidos, and your nationality would be estadounidense. It ends in ense, E-N-S-E. Or if you're from Canada, Canada, we would say soy canadiense.
But the good news, Spanglish friends, is that you don't need to memorize which category every country in the entire world belongs to right now. Simple thing is just to start with your own nationality first. Remember this and the simple idea that some nationalities change their ending depending on a person's gender, how they identify.
You don't need to memorize every country today. Just remember the pattern, soy plus nationality, and listen for that changing between O and A ending. And if you're ever unsure, people will still understand you. This is about communication, and also most of nationalities might change in O and A.
That's right. There have certainly been many times where I've said soy australiano accidentally instead of australiana. Many, many times. And people still understood where I was from. Okay, now let's talk about where you live in Spanish. How do you say where you currently live in Spanish? As we know that this can be different to your nationality. You might not live in the place where you were born. So to do this, we're going to use the verb vivir. Vivir means to live. Okay, we need to use the verb conjugation for I live to say I live somewhere in Spanish, which is yo vivo. Vivo means I live.
And here you can mix it with the place where you live, the country. The sentence structure would be very simple. Yo vivo plus the place.
For example, I could say vivo en Montevideo. I live in Montevideo. Or I could say vivo en Toronto. I live in Toronto.
Exactly. So this is just like we heard Em and I say in our mini conversation. She said, soy australiana, pero vivo en Toronto.
But in this case, we're saying pero. Now, this is a little word that means but. And that's very useful to structure a sentence when you want to say that you live a different place from where you were born. To say I'm this nationality, but I currently live here.
Nice, nice. And this brings us to our final question. How do you ask someone else where they are from, their origin or nationality? Here, you'd ask, ¿de dónde eres? I repeat it again. ¿De dónde eres? This means, where are you from? This question is about identity, the place where you are from originally, where you were born.
That's right, your nationality. Alternatively, you can ask someone where they live now. You would ask, ¿Dónde vives? ¿Dónde vives? Where are you living?
So think of this in this way. ¿De dónde eres? Where you are from originally, the place where you were born. And ¿Dónde vives? Means where do you live right now? Which this place might change.
Exactamente, Val. 2 different questions, 2 different answers, but now you know how to ask and respond to both. Woohoo!
Nice. So today, Spanglish friends, you learned 3 things.
You learned how to say your nationality using the structure of soy plus nationality. And you know now that that structure of nationality might change between male and female identifying individuals based on different countries. Just get to know your countries first. Why don't you pop your country in the comments right now if you're unsure how to say yours, and Profe Val will reply back with the answer of, do you need to change the ending based on its gender? Secondly, you learned how to say where you live right now using the sentence structure of vivo plus the place. For example, vivo en Sydney. I live in Sydney. And last but not least, you learned the difference between asking someone where they're from originally, their nationality, de dónde eres, versus where they live right now. Where are they living? ¿Dónde vives?
These are exactly the tools you'll need right now for this week's Reto, our challenge of the week. Amigos, tell us in Spanish where you are from and where you live in the comments in Español, so you could answer to this question, ¿De dónde eres? Or ¿Dónde vives?
And if you want to say both, you could say soy plus your nationality and then say vivo en, which means I live in, plus your city.
Don't worry if it's short, just try to use what we've learned today.
Post your answer right now in the comments or send us a direct message on Instagram. We might feature your answer in an upcoming episode. Who's going to surprise us this week with their awesome answer?
Ooh. Speaking of awesome things, we got so many great responses last week. Shout out goes to Ash, who messaged us on Instagram with some awesome feedback.
Yes, you're our Spanglish friend of the week. They said your podcast makes Spanish learning feel genuinely fun and approachable. And the way you break down concepts is incredibly beginner friendly. Amazing work turning simple topics like pets into such clear, real life Spanish practice. Wowee. Thank you so much, Ash, for being part of our community. What a nice message. It certainly made Val and I's days. Muchísimas gracias.
Absolutely. Gracias, Ash. Muchísimas gracias. And thank you for tuning in. Great work today, Spanglish friends. Remember, practice makes progress, not perfection.
Spoiler alert for next week's episode, we're going to be learning how to talk about your job or your profession in basic Spanish to be able to say things like, I'm a manager or I'm a teacher, I'm an engineer and I work for this company, and so much more to start having better beginner conversations in Espanol.
Great topic. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Nos vemos. Thanks for listening to Spanglish Friends. We're both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us, leave a rating, or tell a friend about the show. It helps our awesome community grow.
Join fellow beginner Spanish learners by following us on Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends.
Congratulations on taking another step in your Spanish learning journey.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.